The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the dimly lit lounge, but inside, the world had narrowed down to the 3 inches of space between me and Elena. I could smell the faint, intoxicating scent of vanilla and rain clinging to her skin. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. She simply leaned in to reach for her drink, her silk sleeve brushing against my forearm like a live wire. The contact sent a jolt through me that made my breath hitch. I looked up, and there she was, already watching me. Her eyes were dark, swirling with an intensity that felt like a challenge. She didn't look away. Instead, she tilted her head, a playful, devastating smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "You're awfully quiet tonight," she whispered, her voice a low, velvet hum that vibrated right in the center of my chest. She moved closer. So close I could feel the heat radiating off her body. My heart began to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a dull thudding that I was certain she could hear in the heavy silence between us. I reached out, my fingers trembling just slightly, and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. My hand lingered there, my thumb grazing the sensitive skin of her jawline. The air felt thick, charged with the kind of electric tension that precedes a storm. She leaned into my touch, her eyes fluttering shut for a heartbeat, and for that second, I felt like the only man in the world who mattered. "Maybe I'm just enjoying the view," I replied, my voice rougher than I intended. The teasing glint in her eyes deepened. She reached up, her cool fingers wrapping around my wrist, not to pull my hand away, but to hold it there, pressed against her skin. The closeness was intoxicating, a sensory overload of her warmth, the soft light reflecting in her eyes, and the sudden, overwhelming urge to never let go. I had loved her with everything I had, loudly, proudly, and without apology. In that moment, surrounded by the glow of the city lights and the rhythmic pulse of the rain, I believed we were invincible. I believed that this heat, this connection, was the foundation of a lifetime. But as she pulled me closer, whispering a promise against my ear that made my head spin, I didn't notice the way her phone, face down on the table, lit up with a single, silenced notification. I didn't see the shadow that flickered across her face when she thought I wasn't looking. I was drowning in the noise of my own heart, completely deaf to the devastating silence of what she was hiding. In the weeks that followed that night in the lounge, our love felt like a high-speed chase. I lived to make her feel worshipped. I was the one who surprised her with flowers at her office for no reason, the one who planned weekend getaways to the coast just to see her smile against a sunset, and the one who spoke her name like a prayer in every crowded room. I loved her loudly because I thought volume was the same thing as security. I thought if I filled every silence with my devotion, there would be no room for doubt to creep in. But silence has a way of carving out its own space. There were moments, small, jagged cracks in the porcelain, that I chose to smooth over with more affection. I remember a Tuesday night, the air thick with the scent of the pasta I'd spent 2 hours cooking. Elena was sitting at the kitchen island, her legs crossed, swinging a designer heel back and forth. I stepped behind her, sliding my hands around her waist and burying my face in the crook of her neck. I felt her stiffen for a fraction of a second before she forced herself to relax. "You're home late," I murmured, kissing the soft skin behind her ear. "Meetings, Leo, just meetings," she replied, her voice steady, yet she didn't turn around to face me. She stayed staring at her reflection in the dark window. I turned her around in my arms, pulling her body flush against mine. The romantic tension was still there, a magnetic pull that made my blood sing, but there was a new, cold current running beneath it. I looked into her eyes, searching for the girl who used to look at me like she was her entire world. She gave me a slow, lingering kiss that tasted of expensive wine and something else, something distant. "You worry too much, Leo," she whispered, her thumb tracing the line of my lower lip. It was a bold, intimate gesture that effectively silenced the question forming in my throat. She knew exactly how to use her touch to distract me,
how to use a heated look to make me forget the way she'd pulled her phone away when I entered the room. I wanted to believe the unspoken truths were just my imagination. I wanted to believe that the way she started wearing a new, muskier perfume was just a change in taste, not a scent meant for someone else's senses. Every time I felt her drifting, I pulled harder, loving her with a desperate, noisy intensity. I showered her with touch, hand-holding under dinner tables, stolen kisses in elevators, whispers of a future that felt increasingly like a ghost story. I was so busy building a monument to our perfect life that I didn't feel the foundation rotting. I didn't realize that while I was shouting my love from the rooftops, Elena was learning the art of the whisper. She was becoming a master of the quiet exit, even while she was still standing right in front of me, letting me hold her hand. The atmosphere in our home had shifted from warm to suppressing, a heavy fog of unspoken words and meetings that ran into the early hours of the morning. The jealousy didn't hit me all at once. It arrived in sharp, jagged needles. It was the way her breath hitched when a specific name popped up on her screen, or the way she would suddenly become hyper-affectionate, smothering me with kisses and bold, lingering touches, as if she were trying to drown out her own guilt with physical distraction. One Friday night, we were dressed for a gala, the air between us crackling with a dangerous kind of electricity. I watched her in the mirror as she fastened a diamond necklace, her bare shoulders glowing under the vanity lights. She looked breathtaking, a masterpiece of elegance and secrets. I stepped up behind her, my hands gliding over her waist, feeling the heat of her skin through the thin silk of her dress. "You look like you're miles away," I said, my voice dropping to a low, possessive growl. I turned her to face me, my grip tightening just enough to show the storm brewing inside me. The tension was thick, a heady mix of desire and distrust. Elena looked up at me, her eyes dark and defiant. She reached up, gripping the lapels of my tuxedo and pulling me down until our lips were inches apart. She leaned in, her lips grazing mine in a slow, torturous tease that made my head swim. But just as I went to deepen the kiss, she pulled back, a ghost of a smirk on her face. The temptation to believe her was a drug, but the evidence was becoming a physical weight. Later that night, at the crowded event, I saw it. Across the shimmering ballroom, Elena stood near a balcony, a glass of champagne in hand. A man approached her, someone I didn't recognize, and the way she looked at him wasn't the way she looked at me. It was a look of shared secrets, of a forbidden longing that didn't need words. He leaned in, his hand ghosting over the small of her back, a gesture so intimate that it felt like a slap to my face. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a cold fist. The loud love I had championed felt like a hollow shout in an empty canyon. As I began to weave through the crowd towards them, the room seemed to blur. I was done with the whispers. I was done with the shadows. I was seconds away from a breaking point that would shatter everything I thought I knew. The gala was a blur of spinning lights and muffled music as I followed them into the shadows of the estate's sprawling gardens. The air out here was cool, smelling of damp earth and blooming jasmine, but my blood was boiling. I found them in a secluded stone gazebo, shielded from the house by a wall of weeping willows. The silence out here wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, pregnant with the weight of a truth I wasn't ready to face. Elena stood against a stone pillar, and he was there, crowding her space, his presence an invasion of everything I thought belonged to me. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her collarbone, and my breath stopped. She didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned her head back, her eyes fluttering shut for a heartbeat, and for that second, signaling a devastating level of comfort. "We can't keep doing this," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant thum of the party. He stepped even closer, his hand sliding from her neck to her waist, pulling her flush against him. The intimacy was bold, a silent confirmation of every fear I'd spent months burying. "Lead face," he murmured a drowsy response to, How much longer are you going to play the part of the happy wife while you're thinking of me every time he touches you? I was paralyzed, hidden in the shadows just feet away. The romantic energy I had felt with her for years, that electric spark, was being mirrored right in front of me, but I was no longer the source. It was a peak of pure, agonizing tension. I watched them as they reached up, her fingers tangling in his hair, drawing him down. The air felt thin, the suspense screaming in my ears. I wanted to roar, to break the silence of her betrayal with the volume of my pain. Just as their lips were about to meet, my foot caught on a loose stone. The sound was a gunshot in the quiet night. Elena's eyes snapped open, locking onto the darkness where I stood. Her color drained from her face, and for the first time, the quiet girl looked absolutely terrified.